nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpness, quick clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
Sounds. The house was near the beach. It was a big old place where nobody had lived for years. From time to time, somebody would force open a window or a door and spend the night there, but never longer. 3 fishermen caught in a storm took shelter there one night. With some dry wood they found inside, they made a fire in the fireplace. They lay down on the floor and tried to get some sleep, but none of them slept that night. First, they heard footsteps upstairs. It sounded like there were several people moving back and forth. When one of the fishermen called, "Who's up there?" the footsteps stopped. Then they heard a woman scream. The scream turned into a groan and died away. Blood began to drip from the ceiling into the room where the fishermen huddled. A small red pool formed on the floor and soaked into the wood. A door upstairs crashed shut, and again the woman screamed. "Not me!" she cried. It sounded as if she was running, her high heels tapping wildly down the hall. "I'll get you!" a man shouted, and the floor shook as he chased her. Then silence. There wasn't a sound until the man who had shouted began to laugh. Long peals of horrible laughter filled the house. It went on and on until the fishermen thought they would go mad, when finally it stopped. The fishermen heard someone coming down the stairs, dragging something heavy that bumped on each step. They heard him drag it through the front hall and out the front door. The door opened, then it slammed shut. Again, silence. Suddenly, a flash of lightning filled the house with a green blaze of light. A ghastly face stared at the fishermen from the hallway. Then came a crash of thunder. Terrified, they ran out into the storm.
Imagine this. You're driving along a deserted...
You didn't say the title of the story.
Oh, maybe it's Imagine This. Alright, so... what was it? Imagine this. You're driving along a deserted road, one lonely... Sorry. Not going to be pretty.
No problems.
Imagine this. You're driving along a deserted and lonely road one night. Suddenly, your headlights pick up something along the side of the road. At first, you can't make out what it is. But as you draw closer, you're able to get a better look at it. To your horror, you realize that the thing on the side of the road was like nothing you've seen before. Whatever it is, it's something that shouldn't be on this road, or any road, ever. Without warning, the thing rushes out into the road in front of you, and you get a good look at it in the full glare of your headlights. You wish you hadn't. People from all over the world had been reporting experiences like this for many years. What are they seeing? Or think they're seeing? Lots of different things. Take the experience reported by 29-year-old Margaret Johnson on the spring night in 1966. She and her boyfriend were driving down a lonely road near a town of Drogheda, Ireland. Drogheda? Drogheda? On a spring night in 1966... On a spring night in 1966, she and her boyfriend were driving down a lonely road near the town of Drogheda in... I fucked that up again! Drogheda. Alright. Drogheda in Ireland. Suddenly, John was forced to brake as hard as a horse... Suddenly, John was forced to brake hard as a horse loomed up in front of us. I was thrown back in the seat. When I looked out the window, I saw this monster or ghost or whatever it was. I could see John's face that he saw it too. I think I screamed. But both of us were so frightened that we were paralyzed. The thing had a horse body, but it has a face, leering and hairy and huge, which shocked the animal. Wait, God fucking damn it, this is poorly written. But it was the face, leering and hairy, huge, which shocked. The animal stretched right across the road and completely blocked the car. It stayed for 20 minutes. We were petrified. Then it vanished. John quickly swung the car around and drove me home about a mile away. We were so frightened that we drove off through the gate and knocked it off its hinges. Or take the experience reported in the 1967 letter to the editor of the Winona, Mississippi Times. It came from a Georgia man who signed himself only as J.H. According to J.H., he and his brother were driving their pickup to Marietta, Georgia on November 7th, 1966. At about 1:30 in the morning, they were on the highway between the towns of Europa and Winona, Mississippi. The headlights of the pickup illuminated a figure running alongside of the road. It was about 7 feet tall and covered in hair. J.H.'s first thought was that the thing was a bear, but bears don't run on two legs. Not for long, anyways. The creature was holding up one arm, waving like a goodbye or giving a stop signal. The face of the creature, he said, was like a person gone wild or crazy. It looked both human and animal. J.H. and his brother agreed that the thing, whatever it was, appeared to be scared. Perhaps it had even signaled for help. But the men in the truck were also scared. They drove off as fast as they could without bothering to investigate further. J.H. went on to say that he had once been a prospector in the mountains of Northern California. There he had heard many stories of a legendary monster called Bigfoot. He had always laughed at such stories, but since the thing he saw on the road looked a lot like the descriptions of Bigfoot, he wasn't laughing anymore. In fact, many people, particularly in America, claim that they have seen a Bigfoot-like creature along the side of a deserted road. Sometimes the creature seems to be very solid and real. On April 28, 1975, at 3 in the morning, Peter Hurek was driving home to his home in Pennsylvania. Suddenly, a hairy giant loomed up in front of his car. Hurek couldn't avoid the thing. He struck it with his left front fender. It screamed and ran away, clutching its side. There was a dent in the fender of his car, with what appeared to be a bit of fur sticking out of it. Police searched the area where the encounter was supposed to have taken place, but they could find nothing. Others have reported accidentally hitting the creature head-on, but instead of the car-crunching impact they had expected, they passed right through it, as if it was a... But instead of the car-crunching impact they had expected, they passed right through it, as if it were some sort of ghost or phantom. A few brave souls said that they actually got out of their cars after such an encounter, fully expecting to find a dead or mortally wounded monster. They put a fucking comma right there. Oh. Find a dead or mortally wounded monster knocked off... There we go. Fully expecting to find dead or mortally wounded monster knocked off to the side of the road. Instead, they found nothing. Similar tales have been told about encounters with a variety of other fantastical creatures along the roadside. In Britain, drivers have reported seeing a variety of phantom dogs for many years. Usually these dogs are huge, black with glowing red eyes. More than anything, they resemble the Hound of Baskerville, of this famous Sherlock Holmes tale. The dog will either be standing along the side of the road staring at the driver, or it will suddenly, and apparently suicidally, leap out in front of the car. Of course, there is no impact, and no dog is ever found. In Britain, it is considered very bad luck to see one of these phantom black dogs. According to some legends, people who see one are fated to die within a year. Mountain lions or pumas have occasionally been reported prowling the roadsides of the American Midwest, where there very definitely should be no mountain lions. One thoroughly startled driver said one of these creatures jumped on the hood of his car. When the police were called, no trace of mountain lion could be found. The same sort of stories have been told about kangaroos. Dude, this is fucking stupid.
The same sort of stories have also been told about kangaroos. Now, you may not think a kangaroo is a very frightening animal, and in truth it isn't. But if you happen to be driving along a road in Indiana one night, and suddenly a giant kangaroo hops right out into the middle of the road, you are certainly going to be surprised. Greg Brothers was, when that happened to him in 1974. One of the most extraordinary series of, what was it, roadside encounters began on the night of November 14th, 1966. Two couples from Point Pleasant, West Virginia were driving through an abandoned ammunition dump, known locally as the TNT area. It was located approximately 7 miles outside of the town of Point Pleasant. As they passed the empty powder plant, they saw something, shaped like a man but bigger, standing alongside the road. The thing seemed to have large wings folded against its back and bright, almost luminous, red eyes. The driver of the car slowed down, and the four stared at it for about a minute. But it didn't appear to have any interest in them. The thing then turned away from the road and walked, with a strange, shuffling gait, back toward the door of the powder plant. This strange sight filled the occupants of the car with a sense of uneasiness, almost dread, and they didn't feel like hanging around to see what would happen. The driver stepped on the gas and sped away down Route 62. Imagine their surprise and terror when they looked up in the sky and found that the winged thing was following them. It was flying overhead and seemed to be pacing the car. Though the driver swears that he was doing 100 miles per hour after he spotted it, the thing made a squeaking noise like a mouse. At the city limits, the flying creature veered off and disappeared. That was the first encounter with a creature that was finally dubbed Mothman. The creature didn't really look like a moth, but a popular TV series based on the Batman comics was running on television at the time, and the name stuck. Somehow or other, Mothman became identified with UFOs. There is a persistent human desire to link one mystery with another. But there was no real UFO connection. Mothman fits much more comfortably into the catalog of roadside horrors. For most of the Mothman encounters took place while the victim was driving along some deserted West Virginia road. The creature was almost always described as being between 6 and 7 feet tall and gray. It was standing at the side of the road. At the approach of the car, it might unfold its wings and rise straight up in the air, like a helicopter. According to one witness, sometimes it flew away, but on other occasions, like the one described by 18-year-old Connie Carpenter, it made straight for the car. It flew directly at the windshield. She thought there was going to be a collision, but Mothman veered off at the last second. "Those eyes," she said. "They were very red, and once they were fixed on me. I couldn't take my own eyes off them. It's a wonder I didn't have a wreck." Most people could only remember the eyes. Connie Carpenter got a closer look at the creature's face, though her description isn't too helpful. It was horrible, like something out of a science fiction movie. The Mothman excitement in the Point Pleasant area lasted for a little over a year. Finally, people just stopped seeing it anymore, or at least they stopped reporting it. Mothman joined that long list of unknown things that we sometimes see, or think we see, while driving along deserted roads at night. So next time you're on one of these deserted roads at night, keep your eyes open and you may see something very strange, but it might be wise not to look too closely. It may be something that you really don't want to see.
The Thing. Ted Martin and Sam Miller were good friends. They spent a lot of time together. On this particular night, they were sitting on a fence near the post office talking about one thing or another. There was a field of turnips across the road. Suddenly, they saw something crawl out of the field and stand up. It looked like a man, but in the dark, it was hard to tell for sure. Then it was gone. But soon, it appeared again. It walked halfway across the road, then it turned around and went back into the field. Then it came out a third time and started toward them. By now, Ted and Sam were scared, and they started running. But when they finally stopped, they decided they were being foolish. They weren't sure what had scared them, so they decided to go back and get a better look. Pretty soon, they saw it, for it was coming to meet them. It was wearing black pants, a white shirt, and black suspenders. Sam said, "I'm going to try to touch it, then we'll know if it's real." He walked up to it and peered into its face. It had bright, penetrating eyes sunk deep in its head. It looked like a skeleton. Ted took one look and screamed, and again he and Sam ran, but this time the skeleton followed them. When they got to Ted's house, they stood in the doorway and watched it. It stayed out in the road for a while, then it disappeared. A year later, Ted got sick and died. Toward the end, Sam sat up with him every night. The night Ted died, Sam said he looked just like the skeleton.
Wonderful sausage. One dark, rainy afternoon, a fat and jolly butcher named Samuel Blunt had an argument over money with his wife Eloise. Blunt lost his temper and killed Eloise. Then he ground her up into sausage meat and buried her bones under a big flat rock in the backyard. To keep the murder a secret, he told everyone that she had moved away. Blunt mixed his new sausage meat with pork and seasoned it with salt and pepper, added some sage and thyme and a bit of garlic. To give it a special flavor, he smoked it in his smokehouse for a while. He called it Blunt's Special Sausage. There was such a demand for this new sausage that Blunt bought the best hogs he could find and started raising his own pork. He also kept a sharp lookout for humans who might make a tasty sausage meat. One day a nice, plump schoolteacher came into his shop. Blunt grabbed her and ground her up. Another time Blunt's dentist came by. He was a little round man, and into the grinder he went. Then one by one the children in the neighborhood began to disappear. And so did their kittens and puppies. But no one ever dreamed that Blunt, the butcher, had anything to do with it. Things went on that way for years. Then one day Blunt made a big mistake. That boy came into the butcher shop. Blunt grabbed him and started to drag him off to the sausage grinder. But the boy broke loose and ran out of the shop, and Blunt chased after him, waving a big butcher knife. When people saw this, they realized at once what had become of all the missing children and grown-ups, and kittens and puppies. And the angry crowd gathered at the butcher shop. No one knows for sure what happened to Blunt that day. Some say he was fed to his hogs, others say he was fed to the sausage grinder, but he was never seen again, and neither was his wonderful God fucking damn it! But he was never seen again, and neither was his wonderful sausage.
Room for one more. A man named Joseph Blackwell came to Philadelphia on a business trip. He stayed with friends in the big house they owned outside the city. That night they had a good time visiting, but when Blackwell went to bed, he tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. Sometime during the night he heard a car turn into the driveway. He went to the window to see who was arriving at such a late hour. In the moonlight he saw a long, black hearse filled with people. The driver of the hearse looked up at him. When Blackwell saw his queer, hideous face, he shuddered. The driver called to him, "There's room for one more." Then he waited for a minute or two, and he drove off. In the morning, Blackwell told his friends what had happened. "You were dreaming," they said. "I must have been," he said, "but it didn't seem like a dream." After breakfast, he went into Philadelphia. He spent the day high above the city in one of the new office buildings there. Late in the afternoon, he was waiting for an elevator to take him back down to the street. But when it arrived, it was very crowded. One of the passengers looked out and called to him. "There's room for one more," he said. It was the driver of the hearse. "No thanks," said Blackwell. "I'll get the next one." The doors closed, and the elevator started down. There was a shrieking and screaming, and the sound of a crash. The elevator had fallen to the bottom of the shaft. Everyone aboard was killed.
Polaris. Into the north window of my chamber glows the pole star with uncanny light. All through the long hellish hours of blackness it shines there, and in the autumn of the year, when the winds from the north curse and whine, and the red-leaved trees of the swamp mutter things to one another in the small hours of the morning under the horned waning moon, I sit by the casement and watch that star. Down from the heights reels the glittering Cassiopeia as the hours wear on, while Charles Wayne lumbers up from behind the vapor-soaked swamp trees that sway in the night wind. Just before dawn, Arcturus winks rudely from above the cemetery on the low hillock, and Coma Berenice shimmers wildly afar off in the mysterious east, but still the pole star leers down from the same place in the black vault, winking hideously like an insane watching eye which strives to convey some strange message, yet recalls nothing save that it once had a message to convey. When do I remember the night of the great aurora, when over the swamp played the shocking chorizations of the demon light? After the beams came clouds, and then I slept, and it was under the horned waning moon that I saw the city for the first time. Still and somnolent did it lie on a strange plateau in a hollow betwixt strange peaks. Of ghastly marble were its walls and its towers, its columns, domes, and pavements. In the marble streets were marble pillars, the upper parts of which were carved into the images of grave, bearded men. The air was warm and stirred not, and overhead, scarce 10 degrees from the zenith, glowed that watching pole star. Long did I gaze on the city, but the day came not. When the red Aldebaran, which blinked low in the sky but never set, had crawled a quarter of the way around the horizon. I saw light and motion in the houses on the streets. Forms strangely robed, but at once noble and familiar, walked abroad, and under the horned waning moon men talked wisdom in a tongue which I understood, though it was unlike any language I had ever known. And when the red Aldebaran had crawled more than halfway around the horizon, there were again darkness and silence. When I awaked, I was not as I had been. Upon my memory was graven the vision of the city, and within my soul had arisen another and vaguer recollection, of whose nature I was not then certain. Thereafter, on the cloudy nights when I could sleep, I saw the city often, sometimes under the horned waning moon, and sometimes under the hot yellow rays of a sun which did not set, but which wheeled low around the horizon, and on the clear nights the pole star leered as never before. Gradually I came to wonder what might be my place in that city on the strange plateau betwixt strange peaks. At first content to view the scene as an all-observant, uncorporeal presence, I now desired to define my relation to it, and to speak my mind amongst the grave men who conversed each day in the public square. I said to myself, "This is no dream, for by what means can I prove the greater reality of that other life in the house of stone and brick south of the sinister swamp and the cemetery and the low hillock where the pole star peers into my north window each night?" One night, as I listened to the discourse of the strange square containing many statues, I felt a change, and perceived that I had at last a bodily form. Nor was I a stranger in the streets of Leletho, which lies on the plateau of Sarkis, betwixt the peaks Naughton and Cataphonic. It was my friend Alos who spoke, and his speech was one that pleased my soul, for it was the speech of a true man and patriot. That night had the news come of Dakos' fall, and of the advance of the Anutos, squat, hellish, yellow fiends who 5 years ago had appeared out of the unknown west to ravage the confines of our kingdom, and finally to besiege our towns. Having taken the fortified places at the foot of the mountain, their way now lay open to the plateau, unless every citizen could resist with the strength of 10 men. For the squat creatures were mighty in the arts of war, and knew not the scruples of honor which held back our tall, gray-eyed men of Lamar with ruthless conquest. Alos, my friend, was commander of all the forces on the plateau, and in him lay the last hope of our country. On this occasion he spoke of the perils to be faced, and exhorted the men of Leletho, bravest of the Lomarians, to sustain the traditions of their ancestors, who when forced to move southward from Zobria before the advance of the great ice sheet, even as our descendants must someday flee from the land of Lumar, valiant and victoriously swept aside the hairy, long-armed cannibal Nofcast that stood in their way. To me, Alos denied a warrior's part, for I was feeble and given to strange faintings when subjected to stress and hardships. But my eyes were the keenest in the city, despite the long hours I gave each day to the study of the Nakodic manuscripts and the wisdom of the Zobnarian fathers. So my friend, desiring not to doom me to inaction, rewarded me with the duty which was second to nothing in importance. To the watchtower of Thapnin he sent me, there to serve as the eyes of our army. Should the Anutos attempt to gain the citadel by the narrow pass behind the peak Naughton, and thereby surprise the garrison, I was to give the signal of fire which would warn the waiting soldiers and save the town from immediate disaster. Alone I mounted the tower, for every man of stout body was needed in the passes below. My brain was sore dazed with excitement and fatigue, for I had not slept in many days, yet was my purpose firm, for I loved my native land of Lomar, and the marble city of Leletho, that lies betwixt the peaks of Naughton and Cadiphonic. But as I stood in the tower's topmost chamber, I beheld the horned waning moon, red and sinister, quivering through the vapors that hovered over the distant valley of Banoff, and through the opening in the roof glittered the pale pole star, fluttering as if alive, and leering like a fiend in temper. Methought its spirit whispered evil counsel, soothing me to traitorous somnolence, with a damnable rhythmical promise which it repeated over and over. Slumber, watcher, till the spheres 26,000 years have revolved, and I return to the spot where I now burn. Other stars anon shall rise to the axis of the skies, stars that soothe and stars that bless, with a sweet forgetfulness. Only when my round is o'er shall the past disturb thy door. Vainly did I struggle with my drowsiness, seeking to connect these strange words with some lore of the skies which I had learnt from the Nakodic manuscripts. My head, heavy and reeling, drooped to my breast, and when next I looked up it was in a dream, with the pole star grinning at me through a window from over the horrible swaying trees of a dream swamp, and I am still dreaming. In my shame and despair I sometimes scream fanatically, begging the dream creatures around me to waken me ere the Anutos steal up the pass behind the peak Naughton and take the citadel by surprise. But these creatures are demons, for they laugh at me and tell me I am not dreaming. They mock me whilst I sleep, and whilst the squat yellow foe may be creeping silently upon us, I have failed in my duty and betrayed the marble city of Aletho. I have proven false to Alos, my friend and commander, but still these shadows of my dream deride me. They say there is no land of Lomar, save in my nocturnal imaginings, that in these realms where the pole star shines high and red, Aldebaran crawls low around the horizon. There has been naught save ice and snow for thousands of years, and never a man save squat yellow creatures blighted by the cold, whom they call Esquimaux. And as I writhe in my guilty agony, frantic to save the city whose peril every moment grows, and vainly striving to shake off this unnatural dream of a house of stone and brick, south of a sinister swamp and a cemetery on a low hillock, the pole star, evil and monstrous, leers down from the black vault, winking hideously like an insane watching eye, which strives to convey some strange message, yet recalls nothing save that it once held a message to convey.
The Wolf Girl. Travel northwest into the desert from Del Rio, Texas. Eventually you will come to Devil's River. In the 1830s, a trapper named John Dent and his wife Molly settled where Dry Creek runs into Devil's River. Dent was after beaver, which were plentiful there. He and Molly built a cabin from brush, and near it they put up an arbor to give them shade. Molly Dent became pregnant. She was ready to have their child. John Dent raced on horseback to their nearest neighbors several miles away. "My wife is having a baby," he said to the man and his wife. "Can you help us?" They agreed to come at once. As they got ready to leave, a violent storm came up and a bolt of lightning struck and killed John Dent. The man and his wife managed to find his cabin, but did not arrive until the next day. By then, Molly Dent was dead too. It looked as if she had given birth before she died, but the neighbors could not find the baby. Since there were wolf tracks all around, they decided the wolves must have eaten it. They buried Molly Dent and left. A number of years after she died, people began to tell a strange tale. Some swore it was a true story, others said it could never have happened. The story begins in a small settlement a dozen miles from Molly Dent's grave. Early one morning, a pack of wolves raced in from the desert and killed some goats. Such attacks were not unusual in those days, but a boy thought he saw a naked young girl with long blonde hair running with the wolves. A year or two later, a woman came upon some wolves eating a goat they had just killed. Eating the goat with them, she claimed, was a naked young girl with long blonde hair. When the wolves and the girls saw her, they fled. The woman said that at first the girl ran on all fours, then stood and ran like a human swiftly as the wolves. People started wondering if this wolf girl was Molly Dent's daughter. Had a mother wolf carried her off the day she was born and raised her with the pups? By now she would be 10 or 11 years old. As the story is told, some men began to look for the girl. They searched along the riverbanks and in the desert and its canyons. And one day, it is said, they found her, walking in a canyon with a wolf at her side. When the wolf ran off, the girl hid in an opening in one of the canyon walls. When the man tried to capture her, she fought back, biting and scratching like an enraged animal. When they finally subdued her, she began screaming like a frightened young girl and howling like a frightened young wolf. Her captors bound her with rope, put her across a horse, took her to a small ranch house in the desert. They would turn her over to the sheriff the next day, they decided. They placed her in an empty room and untied her. Terror-stricken, she hid in the shadows. They left her and locked the door. Soon she was screaming and howling again. The men thought they would go mad listening to her, but at last she stopped. When night fell, wolves began howling in the distance. People say that each time they stopped, the girl howled in reply. As the story goes, the cries of the wolves came from every direction and got closer and closer. Suddenly, as if a signal had been given, wolves attacked horses and other livestock. The men rushed into the darkness, firing their guns. High up in the wall, in the room where they had left the girl, was a small window. A plank was nailed across it. She pulled the plank off, crawled through the window, and disappeared. Years passed with no word from the girl. Then one day, some men on horseback came around a bend in the Rio Grande, not far from Devil's River. They claimed they saw a young woman with long blonde hair feeding 2 wolf pups. When she saw the men, she snatched up the pups and ran into the brush. They rode after her, but she quickly left them behind. They searched and searched, but found no trace of her. This is the last we know of the wolf girl, and it is there, in the desert, near the Rio Grande, where this story ends.
Cemetery soup. On her way home from the market, the woman took a shortcut through the cemetery. There, sticking up out of the ground, she saw a big bone. She picked it up and looked it over carefully. "This will make a very good soup bone," she said. "I think I'll take it home. It's perfect weather for hot soup." When she got home, the first thing she did was start the soup. Into the big soup pot went water, carrots, green beans, corn, barley, onions, potatoes, and a snitch of beef, some salt and pepper, and the bone. She brought it all to a boil, then brought it down to a simmer. "Yum," she said, sniffing it and tasting it. "I can hardly wait till supper." Suddenly, she heard a small voice. "Please give me back my bone." The woman paid no attention. Soon she heard the voice again. "May I have my bone back, please?" The woman was reading the newspaper, and once again she didn't take any notice. In a little while, the voice spoke up once more. It was beginning to sound angry. "Give me back my bone!" The woman kept on reading the paper. "Some people are too impatient," she muttered. Once more the voice spoke. Now it sounded very angry and was so loud that the whole house shook. "I want my bone back!" The woman reached into the pot, grabbed the bone, and threw it out the window. In a voice just as loud, she shouted, "Take it!" There was an eerie silence. Then the woman heard footsteps scurrying away from the house down the road toward the cemetery, and she got up and served herself some soup.
The man in the middle. It was almost midnight. Sally Truitt had just gotten on the subway train at 50th Street after visiting her mother. "Don't worry," Sally had told her. "The subway is safe. There is always a policeman on duty." But that night, she didn't see one. Except for her, the subway car was empty. At 42nd Street, 3 tough-looking men got on. 2 of them were holding up the third, who looked drunk. His head rolled from side to side, and his legs refused to work. When they got him seated between them, his head came to rest on one of his shoulders. Sally thought he was staring at her. She buried her head in a book and tried not to notice. At 28th Street, one of the men stood up. "Take it easy, Jim," he said to the man in the middle, and he got off. At 23rd Street, Jim's other friend stood up. "You'll be fine," he said, and he got off. Now the only ones left in the car were Jim and Sally. Just then the train went around a sharp curve, and Jim pitched onto the floor at Sally's feet. When she looked down at him, she saw a trickle of blood on the side of his head, and just above it, a bullet hole.
"What do you come for?" There was an old woman who lived all by herself, and she was very lonely. Sitting in the kitchen one night, she said, "Oh, I wish I had some company." No sooner had she spoken than down the chimney tumbled 2 feet from which the flesh had rotted. The old woman's eyes bulged with terror. Then 2 legs dropped to the hearth and attached themselves to the feet. Then a body tumbled down, then 2 arms, and a man's head. As the woman watched, the parts came together into a great gangling man. The man danced around and around the room. Faster and faster he went. Then he stopped, and he looked into her eyes. "What do you come for?" she asked in a small voice that shivered and shook. "What do I come for?" he said. "I come for you!"
The Shining, inside room 217. Danny was standing outside room 217 again. The passkey was in his pocket. He was staring at the door with a kind of drugged avidity, and his upper body seemed to twitch and jiggle beneath his flannel shirt. He was humming softly and tunelessly. He hadn't wanted to come here, not after the fire hose. He was scared to come here. He was scared that he had taken the passkey again, disobeying his father. He had wanted to come here. Curiosity killed the cat. Satisfaction brought him back. It was like a constant fishhook in his brain, a kind of nagging siren song that would not be appeased. And hadn't Mr. Halloran said, "I don't think there's anything here that can hurt you. You promised." Promises were made to be broken. He jumped at that. It was as if that thought had come from outside, insectile, buzzing, softly cajoling. Promises were made to be broken, my dear Redrum. To be broken, splintered, shattered, hammered apart. 4. His nervous humming broke into low, a tonal song. "Loo, Loo, skip to my Loo, my darling." Hadn't Mr. Halloran been right? Hadn't that been, in the end, the reason why he had kept silent and allowed the snow to close them in? Just close your eyes and it'll be gone. What he had seen in the presidential suite had gone away, and the snake had only been a fire hose that had fallen onto the rug. Yes, even the blood in the presidential suite had been harmless. Something old, something that had happened long before he was born or even thought of, something that was done with, like a movie that only he could see. There was nothing, really nothing, in this hotel that could hurt him, and if he had to prove to himself by going into this room, shouldn't he do so? "Loo, Loo, skip to my Loo." Curiosity killed the cat, my dear Redrum. Redrum, my dear. Satisfaction brought him back safe and sound. From toes to crown, from head to ground, he was safe and sound. He knew that those things are like scary pictures. They can't hurt you. But oh my God, what big teeth you have, Grandma. What big teeth you have, Grandma. And is that of a wolf? in a Bluebeard suit or a Bluebeard in a wolf suit, and I'm so. Glad you asked, because curiosity killed the cat, and it was the hope of satisfaction that brought him. Up the hall, treading softly over the blue and the twisting jungle carpet. He had stopped by the fire extinguisher. I put the brass nozzle back into the frame, and then had poked it repeatedly with his finger, heart throbbing, whispering, "Come on and hurt me. Come on and hurt me, you cheap prick. Can't do it, can you, huh? You're nothing but a cheap fire hose. Can't do nothing but lie there. Come on, come on." He had felt insane with bravado, and nothing had happened. It was only a hose after all. Only canvas and brass you could hack into pieces, and it would never complain, never twist and jerk and bleed green slime all over the blue carpet, because it was only a hose, not a nose and not a rose, not glass buttons or satin bows, not a snake in a sleepy doze. And he had hurried on because he was late. "I'm late," said the White Rabbit. And the White Rabbit, yes, now there was a white rabbit out by the playground. Once it had been green, but now it was white, as if something had shocked it repeatedly on the snowy, windy nights and turned it old. Danny took the pass key from his pocket and slid into the lock. Lulu. The White Rabbit had been on its way to a croquet party, to the Red Queen's croquet party, storks for mallets, hedgehogs for balls. He touched the key, let his fingers wander over it. His head felt dry and sick. He turned the key, and the tumblers thumped back smoothly. "Off with his head! Off with his head! Off with his head!" This game isn't croquet, though the mallets are too short this game. Whack boom, straight through the wicket. "Off with his head!" Danny pushed the door open. It was swung smoothly with a creak. He was standing just outside a large combination bed-sitting room, and although the snow had not reached up this far, the highest drifts were still a foot below the second-floor windows. The room was dark because Daddy had closed all the shutters on the western exposure 2 weeks ago. He stood in the doorway, fumbled to his right, and found the switch plate. 2 bulbs and an overhead cut glass fixture came on. Danny stepped further in and looked around. The rug was deep and soft, a quiet rose color, soothing. A double bed with a white coverlet, a writing desk. Pray tell me, why is a raven like a writing desk? By the large shuttered window, during the season, the constant writer, having a wonderful time, which you were fear, would have a pretty view of the mountains to describe the folks back home. He stepped further in, nothing here, nothing at all, only an empty room, cold because Daddy was heating the east wing today. A bureau, a closet, its the door open to reveal a clutch of hotel hangers, the kind you can't steal. A Gideon Bible on the end table. To his left was the bathroom door, a full-length mirror on its reflecting his own white-faced image. That door was ajar, and he watched his double nod slowly. Yes, that's where it was, whatever it was. In there, in the bathroom. His double walked forward, as if to escape the glass. It put its hand out, pressed it against his own. Then it fell away at the angles as the bathroom door swung open. He looked in. A long room, old-fashioned, like a Pullman car. Tiny white hexagonal tiles on the floor. At the far end, a toilet with the lid up. At the right, a wash basin, another mirror above it, the kind that hides a medicine cabinet. To the left, a huge white tub on claw feet, the shower curtain pulled closed. Danny stepped into the bathroom and walked toward the tub dreamily, as if propelled from outside himself, as if this whole thing were one of the dreams Tony had brought him. That he would perhaps see something nice when he pulled the shower curtain back, something Daddy had forgotten or Mommy had lost, something that would make them both happy. So he pulled the shower curtain back. The woman in the tub had been dead for a long time. She was bloated and purple, her gas-filled belly rising of the cold, ice-rimmed water like some fleshy island. Her eyes were fixed on Danny's, glassy and huge like marbles. She was grinning, her purple lips pulled back in a grimace. Her breasts lolled, her pubic hair floated. Her hands were frozen on the knurled porcelain sides of the tub like crab claws. Danny shrieked, but the sound never escaped his lips, turning inward, and it felt down in the darkness like a stone in the wall. He took a single, blundering step backward, hearing his heels clack on the white hexagonal tiles, and at the same moment his urine broke, spilling effortlessly out of him. The woman was sitting up, still grinning, her huge marble eyes fixed on him. She was sitting up. Her dead palms made squittering noises on the porcelain. Her breasts swayed like ancient cracked punching bags. There was the minute sound of breaking ice shards. She was not breathing. She was a corpse, and dead long years. Danny turned and ran, bolting through the bathroom door, his eyes starting from their sockets, his hair on end like the hair of a hedgehog about to be turned into a sacrificial croquet or roque ball, his mouth open and soundless. He ran full tilt into the outside door of 217, which was now closed. He began hammering on it, far beyond realizing that it was unlocked, and that he had only to turn the knob to let himself out. His mouth pealed forth deafening screams that were beyond human auditory range. He could only hammer on the door and hear the dead woman coming for him. Bloated belly, dry hair, outstretched hands, something that had lain slain in the tub for perhaps years, embalmed there in magic. The door would not open, would not. And then the voice of Dick Halloran came to him, so sudden and unexpected, so calm that his locked vocal cords opened, and he began to cry weakly, not with fear but with blessed relief. "I don't think they can hurt you. They're like pictures in a book. Close your eyes and they'll be gone." His eyelids snapped down. His hands curled into balls. His shoulders hunched with the effort of his concentration. Nothing there, nothing there, nothing there at all. Nothing there at all is nothing. Time passed, and he was just beginning to relax, and the door must be unlocked, and he could go, when the year's damp, bloated, fish-smelling hands closed softly around his throat, and he was turned impeccably around to stare into the dead in the purple face.
Footsteps. Liz was doing her homework at the dining room table. Her younger sister Sarah was asleep upstairs. Their mother was out, but she was expected back any minute. When the front door opened and shut, Liz called, "Hello, Mama," but her mother didn't answer, and the footsteps Liz heard were heavier, like a man's. "Who's there?" she called. No one replied. She heard whoever it was walk through the living room, then up the stairs to the second floor. The footsteps moved from one bedroom to another. Again Liz called, "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped. Then she thought, "Oh my God, Sarah is in her bedroom." She ran upstairs to Sarah's room. Only Sarah was there, and she was asleep. Liz looked in the other rooms, but found no one. She went back down to the dining room, scared out of her wits. Soon she heard footsteps again. They were coming down the stairs, into the living room. Now they went into the kitchen. Then the door between the kitchen and the dining room slowly began to open. "Get out!" Liz screamed. The door slowly closed. The footsteps moved out of the kitchen, through the living room, toward the front door. The door opened and shut. Liz ran to the window to see who it was. No one was in sight, nor were there any footsteps in the fresh snow that had been falling.
Something was wrong. One morning, John Sullivan found himself walking along a street downtown. He could not explain what he was doing there, or how he got there, or where he had been earlier. He didn't even know what time it was. He saw a woman walking toward him and stopped her. "I'm afraid I forgot my watch," he said, and smiled. "Can you tell me the time?" When she saw him, she screamed and ran. Then John Sullivan noticed that other people were afraid of him. When they saw him coming, they flattened themselves against a building or ran across the street to stay out of his way. There must be something wrong with me, John Sullivan thought. I'd better go home. He hailed a taxi, but the driver took one look at him and sped away. John Sullivan did not understand what was going on, and it scared him. Maybe somebody at home can come and get me, he thought. He found a telephone and called his wife, but a voice he did not recognize answered. "Is Mrs. Sullivan there?" he asked. "No, she is at a funeral," the voice said. "Mr. Sullivan was killed yesterday in an accident downtown."
The attic. A man named Rupert lived with his dog in a house deep into the woods. Rupert was a hunter and a trapper. The dog was a big German shepherd named Sam. Rupert had raised Sam from a pup. Almost every morning Rupert went hunting, and Sam stayed behind and guarded the house. One morning, as Rupert was checking his traps, he got the feeling that something was wrong at home. He hurried back as fast as he could, but when he got there, he had found Sam was missing. He searched the house and the woods nearby, but Sam was nowhere to be seen. He called and he called, but the dog did not answer. For days, Rupert looked for Sam, but he could not find no trace of him. Finally, he gave up and went back to his work. But one morning, he heard something moving in the attic. He picked up his gun, then he thought, I better be quiet about this. So he took off his boots, and in his bare feet, he began to climb the attic stairs. He slowly took one step, then another, until at last he reached the attic door. He stood outside listening, but he didn't hear a thing. Then he opened the door and— Ah!
Why did Rupert scream?
You'd scream too if you stepped on a nail on your bare feet.
Guts, a story by St. Gutfrey. Inhale, taking as much air as you can. This story should last about as long as you can hold your breath, and then just a little bit longer. So listen as fast as you can. A friend of mine, when he was 13 years old, he heard about pegging. This is when a guy gets banged up the butt with a dildo. Stimulate the prostate gland hard enough, and the rumor is you can have explosive hands-free orgasms. At that age, this friend's a little sex maniac. He's always jonesing for a better way to get his rocks off. He goes out to buy a carrot and some petroleum jelly to conduct a little private research. Then he pictures how it's going to look at the supermarket check stand. The lonely carrot and petroleum jelly rolling down the conveyor belt toward the grocery store cashier. All the shoppers waiting in line, watching, everyone seeing the big evening he has planned. So my friend, he buys milk and eggs and sugar and a carrot. All the ingredients for a carrot cake. And Vaseline, like he's going home to stick a carrot cake up his butt. At home, he whittles the carrot into a blunt tool. He slathers it with grease and grinds his ass down on it. Then, nothing. No orgasm. Nothing happens except it hurts. Then this kid, his mom yells it's supper time. She says to come down, right now. He works the carrot out and stashes the slippery, filthy thing in the dirty clothes under his bed. After dinner, he goes to find the carrot, and it's gone. All his dirty clothes. While he ate dinner, his mom grabbed them all to do laundry. No way could she not find the carrot. Carefully shaved with a paring knife from her kitchen, still shiny with lube and stinky. This friend of mine, he waits months under a black cloud, waiting for his folks to confront him. And they never do. Ever. Even now he's grown up. That invisible carrot hangs over every Christmas dinner, every birthday party. Every Easter egg hunt with his kids, his parents, grandkids. That ghost carrot is hovering over all of them. That's something too awful to name. People in France have a phrase, spirit of the stairway. In French, esprit d'escalier. It means that moment when you find the answer, but it's too late. Say you're at a party and someone insults you, you have to say something. So, under pressure, with everybody watching, you say something lame. But the moment you leave the party, as you start down the stairway, then magic. You come up with the perfect thing you should have said. The perfect crippling put-down. That's the spirit of the stairway. Trouble is, even the French don't have a phrase for the stupid things you actually do say under pressure. Those stupid, desperate things you actually think or do. Some deeds are too low to even get a name. Too low to even get talked about. Looking back, kid psych experts, school counselors now say that most of the last peak in teen suicides was kids trying to choke while they beat off. Their folks would find them, a towel twisted around the kid's neck, the towel tied to the rod in their bedroom closet, their kid dead. Dead sperm everywhere. Of course, the folks cleaned up. They put some pants on their kid. They made it look better. Intentional, at least. The regular kind of sad teen suicide. Another friend of mine, a kid from school, his older brother in the Navy, said how guys in the Middle East jack off different than we do here. This brother was stationed in some camel country where the public market sells what could be fancy letter openers. Each fancy tool is just a thin rod of polished brass or silver, maybe as long as your hand, with a big tip at one end, either a big metal ball or the kind of fancy carved handle you'd see on a sword. This Navy brother says how Arab guys get their dick hard and then insert this metal rod inside the whole length of their boner. They jack off with the rod inside, and it makes getting off so much better, more intense. It's this big brother who travels around the world sending back French phrases, Russian phrases, helpful jack-off tips. After this, the little brother, one day he doesn't show up at school. That night, he calls to ask if I'll pick up his homework for the next couple of weeks, because he's in the hospital. He's got to share a room with old people getting their guts worked on. He says how they all have to share the same television. All he's got for privacy is a curtain. His folks don't come and visit. On the phone, he says how right now his folks could just kill his big brother in the Navy. On the phone, the kid says how, the day before, he was just a little stoned. At home in his bedroom, he was flopped on the bed. He was lighting a candle and flipping through some old porno magazines, getting ready to beat off. This is after he's heard from his Navy brother. That helpful hint about how Arabs beat off? The kid looks around for something that might do the job. A ballpoint pen's too big, a pencil's too big and rough. But, dripped down the side of the candle, there's a thin, smooth ridge of wax that just might work. With just the tip of one finger, this kid snaps the long ridge of wax off the candle. He rolls it smooth between the palms of his hands, long and smooth and thin. Stoned and horny, he sloops it down inside, deeper and deeper into the piss slit of his boner. With a good hank of the wax still poking out the top, he gets to work. Even now, he says those Arab guys are pretty damn smart. They've totally reinvented jacking off. Flat on his back in bed, things are getting so good this kid can't keep track of the wax. He's one good squeeze from shooting his wad when the wax isn't sticking out anymore. The thin wax rod, it's slipped inside. All the way inside. So deep inside he can't even feel the lump of it inside his piss tube. From downstairs his mom shouts it's supper time. She says to come down, right now. This wax kid and the carrot kid are different people, but we all live pretty much the same life. It's after dinner when the kid's guts start to hurt. It's wax, so he figured maybe it would just melt inside him and he'd piss it out. Now his back hurts. His kidneys. He can't stand straight. This kid talking on the phone from his hospital bed. In the background you can hear bells ding, people screaming, game shows. The x-ray shows the truth. Something long and thin, bent double inside his bladder. This long, thin V inside him. It's collecting all the minerals in his piss. It's getting bigger and more rough, coated with crystals of calcium. It's bumping around, ripping up the soft lining in his bladder, blocking his piss from getting out. His kidneys are backed up. What little that leaks out his dick is red with blood. This kid, with his folks, his whole family, them looking at the black x-ray with the doctor and the nurses standing there, the big V of wax glowing white for everybody to see. He has to tell the truth. The way Arabs get off, what his big brother wrote him from the Navy. On the phone right now, he starts to cry. They paid for the bladder operation with his college fund. One stupid mistake and now he'll never be a lawyer. Sticking stuff inside yourself. Sticking yourself inside stuff. A candle in your dick or your head in a noose. We knew it was going to be big trouble. What got me in trouble, I called it pearl diving. This meant whacking off, underwater, sitting on the bottom at the deep end of my parents' swimming pool. With one deep breath, I'd kick my way to the bottom and slip off my swim trunks. I'd sit down there for 2, 3, 4 minutes. Just from jacking off, I had huge lung capacity. If I had the house to myself, I'd do this all afternoon. After I'd finally pump out my stuff, my sperm, it would hang there in big, fat, milky gobs. After that was more diving, to catch it all. To collect it and wipe each handful in a towel. That's why it was called pearl diving. Even with chlorine, there was my sister to worry about. Or Christ almighty, my mom. That used to be my worst fear in the world. My teenage virgin sister thinking she's just getting fat, then giving birth to a 2-headed retard baby. Both the heads looking just like me. Me, the father and the uncle. In the end, it's never what you worry about that gets you. The best part of pearl diving was the inlet port for the swimming pool filter and the circulation pump. The best part was getting naked and sitting on it. As the French would say, who doesn't like getting their butt sucked? Still, 1 minute you're just a kid getting off, and the next minute you'll never be a lawyer. 1 minute I'm settling on the pool bottom and the sky is wavy, light blue through 8 feet of water above my head. The world is silent except for the heartbeat in my ears. My yellow striped swim trunks are looped around my neck for safekeeping, just in case a friend, a neighbor, anybody shows up to ask why I skipped football practice. The steady suck of the pool inlet hole is lapping at me, and I'm grinding my skinny white ass around on that feeling. 1 minute I've got enough air and my dick's in my hand. My folks are gone at their work, and my sister's got ballet. Nobody's supposed to be home for hours. My hand brings me right to getting off and I stop. I swim up to catch another big breath. I dive down and settle on the bottom. I do this again and again. This must be why girls want to sit on your face. The suction is like taking a dump that never ends. My dick hard and getting my butt eaten out. I do not need air. My heart beat in my ears. I stay under until bright stars of light start worming around in my eyes. My legs straight out, the back of each knee rubbed raw against the concrete bottom. My toes are turning blue, my toes and fingers wrinkled from being so long in the water. And then I let it happen. The big white gob starts spouting. The pearls. It's then I need some air. But when I go to kick off against the bottom, I can't. I can't get my feet under me. My ass is stuck. Emergency paramedics will tell you that every year about 150 people get stuck this way, sucked by a circulation pump. Get your long hair caught or your ass and you're going to drown. Every year tons of people do. Most of them in Florida. People just don't talk about it. Not even French people talk about everything. Getting one knee up, getting one foot tucked under me. I get to half standing when I feel the tug against my butt. Getting my other foot under me, I kick off against the bottom. I'm kicking free, not touching the concrete, but not getting to the air either. Still kicking water, thrashing with both arms, I'm maybe halfway to the surface, but not going higher. The heartbeat inside my head getting loud and fast. The bright sparks of light crossing and crisscrossing my eyes. I turn and look back, but it doesn't make sense. This thick rope, some kind of snake, blue-white and braided with veins, has come up out of the pool drain and it's holding onto my butt. Some of the veins are leaking blood, red blood that looks black underwater and drifts away from little rips in the pale skin of the snake. The blood trails away, disappearing in the water, and inside the snake's thin blue-white skin you can see lumps of some half-digested meal. That's the only way this makes sense. Some horrible sea monster, a sea serpent, something that's never seen the light of day. It's been hiding in the dark bottom of the pool drain waiting to eat me. So I kick at it. At the slippery, rubbery, knotted skin and veins of it. And more of it seems to pull out of the pool drain. It's maybe as long as my leg now, but still holding tight around my butthole. With another kick, I'm an inch closer to getting another breath. Still feeling the snake tug at my ass. I'm an incher closer to my escape. Knotted inside the snake, you can see corn and peanuts. You can see a long, bright orange ball. It's the kind of horse pill vitamin my dad makes me take to help put on weight, to get a football scholarship with extra iron and omega-3 fatty acids. It's seeing that vitamin pill that saves my life. It's not a snake. It's my large intestine, my colon pulled out of me, what doctors call prolapsed. It's my gut sucked into the drain. Paramedics will tell you a swimming pool pump pulls 80 gallons of water every minute. That's about 400 pounds of pressure. The big problem is, we're all connected together inside. Your ass is just the far end of your mouth. If I let go, the pump keeps working, unraveling my insides until it's got my tongue. Imagine taking a 400-pound shit and you can see how this might turn you inside out. What I can tell you is, your guts don't feel much pain. Not the way your skin feels pain. The stuff you're digesting, doctors call it fecal matter. Higher up is chyme, pockets of a thin, runny mess studded with corn and peanuts and round green peas. That's all this soup of blood and corn, shit and sperm and peanuts floating around me. Even with my guts unraveling out my ass, me holding on to what's left, even then my first want is to somehow get my swimsuit back on. God forbid my folks see my dick. My one hand holding a fist around my ass, my other hand snags my yellow-striped swim trunks and pulls them from around my neck. Still, getting into them is impossible. I want you to feel your intestines. Go buy a pack of those lambskin condoms. Take one out and unroll it. Pack it with peanut butter, smear it with petroleum jelly, and hold it underwater. Then try to tear it. Try to pull it in half. It's too tough and rubbery. It's so slimy you can't hold on. A lambskin condom. That's just plain old intestine. Now you can see what I'm up against. You let go for a second and you're gutted. You swim for the surface for a breath and you're gutted. You don't swim and you drown. It's a choice between being dead right now or a minute from right now. What my folks will find after work is a big naked fetus, curled in on itself, floating in the cloudy water of their backyard pool, tethered to the bottom by a thick rope of veins and twisted guts. The opposite of a kid hanging himself to death while he jacks off. This is the baby they brought home from the hospital 13 years ago. Here's the kid they hoped would snag a football scholarship and get an MBA, who'd care for them in their old age. Here's all their hopes and dreams, floating here, naked and dead. All around him, big, milky pearls of wasted sperm. Either that or my folks will find me wrapped in a bloody towel, collapsed halfway from the pool to the kitchen telephone, the ragged, torn scrap of my guts still hanging out the leg of my yellow-striped swim trunks. What even the French won't talk about. That big brother in the Navy, he taught us one other good phrase, a Russian phrase, the way we say, "I need that like I need a hole in my head." Russian people say, I need that like I need teeth in my asshole. Those stories you hear about how animals caught in a trap will chew off their leg. Well, any coyote would tell you a couple of bites beats the hell out of being dead. Hell, even if you're Russian, someday you just might want those teeth. Otherwise, what you have to do is, you have to twist around. You hook one elbow behind your knee and pull that leg up into your face. You bite and snap at your own ass. You run out of air and you will chew through anything to get that next breath. It's not something you want to tell a girl on the first date, not if you expect a kiss goodnight. If I told you how it tasted, you would never ever again eat calamari. It's hard to say what my parents were more disgusted by, how I'd got in trouble or how I'd saved my life. After the hospital, my mom said, "You didn't know what you were doing, honey. You were in shock." And she learned how to cook poached eggs. All those people grossed out or feeling sorry for me. I need that like I need teeth in my asshole. Nowadays, people always tell me I look too skinny. People at dinner parties get all quiet and pissed off when I don't eat the pot roast they cooked. Pot roast kills me. Baked ham. Anything that hangs around inside my guts for longer than a couple hours, it comes out still food. Home-cooked lima beans or chunk light tuna fish. I'll stand up and find it still sitting there in the toilet. After you have a radical bowel resectioning, you don't digest meat so great. Most people, you have 5 feet of large intestine. I'm lucky to have my 6 inches. So I never got a football scholarship. Never got an MBA. Both my friends, the wax kid and the carrot kid, they grew up, got big. But I've never weighed a pound more than I did that day when I was 13. Another big problem was, my folks paid a lot of good money for that swimming pool. In the end, my dad just told the pool guy it was a dog. The family dog fell in and drowned. The dead body got pulled into the pump. Even when the pool guy cracked open the filter casing and fished out a rubbery tube, a watery hank of intestine with a big orange vitamin pill still inside, even then my dad just said, "That dog was fucking nuts." Even from my upstairs bedroom window you could hear my old man say, "We couldn't trust that dog alone for a second." Then, my sister missed her period. Even after they changed the pool water, after they sold the house and we moved to another state, after my sister's abortion, even then my folks never mentioned it again. Ever. That is my family's invisible carrot. Now, you can take a good, deep breath. Because I still have not. Well, that's it for the Sequel Productions podcast Halloween special. Featuring the stories of Alvin Schwartz from the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and Scary Stories 3, More Tales to Chill Your Bones, as well as Railway Ghosts and Highway Horrors by Daniel Cohen, The Shining by Stephen King, and Haunted by Chuck Palahniuk. My narrators were Greg Kleino, Dakota Kimes, Kelly Stoll, and myself. Until next Halloween, pleasant screams.